Hello again, everybody. Thank you for joining me on the Noble Crumb. My name is Jason. So, we are at part 3 of the donut series, and today we are making the elusive apple fritter. These are probably one that I'm the most guilty of having when I go out somewhere, just because that flavor of the cinnamon, nutmeg, and the apples is unbelievable. They really aren't that hard to make. The dough recipe is pretty similar to our standard donut dough recipe that we made, but when we fry them, they get darker in color, crispier on the outside, and covered in a beautiful glaze. They're unbelievable. You guys are really going to love them, so please give them a try. So let's get started with the ingredients and let's take a look. Here are the ingredients for my apple fritters. 1.5 tablespoons of yeast, a half a cup of warm water, 2 teaspoons of sugar, 2 cups of flour, a quarter cup of sugar, a quarter teaspoon of baking powder, a quarter teaspoon of nutmeg, 1 teaspoon of salt, 2 tablespoons of shortening, 1 large egg. We're going to use canola or vegetable oil for frying, and we will fry these ones at 370 degrees. Now for the apple filling for the fritters, you need 2 medium apples, a quarter cup of sugar, 2 teaspoons of lemon juice. We'll also need a tablespoon of flour and 4 teaspoons of cinnamon. And finally, for the glaze that I use on these, we're going to use 3 cups of powdered sugar, 3 teaspoons of white corn syrup, a half a teaspoon of vanilla, which is optional, and 1 to 3 tablespoons of hot water. Okay, so the first step for this, I've got my mixing bowl here for my stand mixer. I'm going to add my half a cup of warm water. I'm going to add my 2 teaspoons of sugar. And I'm going to add in my yeast. We're going to let this sit for about 5 minutes so the yeast can activate and get nice and bubbly. So while our yeast is activating, I'm going to take my mixing bowl here. We're going to add our flour. Going to add the half a cup of sugar, our salt, the baking powder, the nutmeg. And we're just going to give this a whisk so that everything's mixed together. The smell of that nutmeg is amazing. And then we're just going to stick this aside. Okay, so it's been a few minutes. I've got some nice bubbles here. I'm going to add my dough hook. And then to the yeast and water mixture, we're going to add in our egg and our lard or shortening. And basically, for a couple minutes, we're just going to take about 1 minute and let this just break up with the dough hook. Alright, so after mixing for 1 minute, you'll see it kind of looks kind of lumpy and not really the nicest. But it was kind of like when we did the regular donut recipe, same thing. Once we start adding the flour, everything will get nice and incorporated. So I'm going to add the flour in 3 steps. So I'm going to add 1/3 of it now. And we're going to let this mix together. Add a little more. Give it a scrape. And then I'm going to add in the last of it. There we go. Once this is combined, we're going to let it knead together for a couple minutes, so probably about 4 minutes total. So this is the point where everything is now combined together, so now we're going to let this go for another 2 minutes and everything will be nice and kneaded together. Alright, so after a couple minutes, the dough is done. Take that dough hook off. Alright, let's take a look here. So I've got a bowl here that I just sprayed with some cooking spray. You can see the dough is nice and soft. It's not sticking to my hands, but it is very moist, which is what you want. So we're going to put that in the bowl just like that. Going to cover it with some plastic wrap, and we're going to let it rise until it's doubled in size. So about, depending on where you are, about an hour to 2 hours, somewhere in there. But that's that. Okay, so for the apples, I've got 2 apples here that I've cut up into little pieces here. So we're going to put that in a frying pan over medium heat. We're going to add our lemon juice. And we're going to add our sugar. So basically this should only take about 5 or 6 minutes. We're just going to lightly cook these down until there's no liquid left and the apples have softened. So we'll keep stirring these for about another 5 minutes. So after 5 minutes, all the liquid has evaporated. The apples are nice and soft. So we're going to put this aside, let them cool down until we're ready to use them. All right, so I have our apple fritter dough here. It looks like it's risen nicely, beautiful and soft. So I'm going to take this out, put it on our floured surface here, and this dough feels so nice. So we're going to roll this guy out to probably about half the thickness that it is now, so about 1/4 of an inch. Not overly thick, not overly thin. Whoops. Should probably add a little flour to the top. That was my fault. All right, that's better. Okay, so rolled this out. So next, I'm going to take my apple and I'm going to spread this over half of the dough. Dump that out. And we'll spread it as evenly as possible over half the dough. Just like that. Then I've got our tablespoon of flour with 4 teaspoons of cinnamon. Mixed it together. We're going to sprinkle that over the apples. The smell of this is absolutely amazing. Okay, now we're going to take this half and we're going to fold it right over top. Give it a press, just like that. And that's the first part. So now that we've got the dough folded in half, what we're going to do is we're going to start cutting it up. So there's no right or wrong way of doing this. You're basically just going to start cutting it into slices like this first. Then we're going to start cutting it next this way. So you're basically getting little squares, cubes, whatever you want to call it, of the apple and the dough. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and just kind of roughly chop a little bit finer. You want the sizes to be kind of random, nothing too small, nothing too big, but that's probably good. Now this is the weird part. You're going to take all these parts and we're going to start combining it together, just like this. Rolling it, we're going to get a bit of a mess. Now this is going to come together. We're going to start kind of putting this together and rolling this into a log about 12 inches long. So I'm just rolling, I'm pressing it. I'm not really compacting it. I am leaving it a little bit on the looser side, but enough that it's going to hold together. Smell of cinnamon is absolutely everywhere. Okay, so I'm just going to grab my measuring tape here. We're looking for about 12, and that is pretty much at 12. Looks good. So then next part is we're going to cut these into 12 pieces. All right, so now that you have them cut up, basically what you're going to do is you're going to take it, you're going to basically flatten it into a patty shape about a ½ inch thick, and you're going to put these onto a pan, and we're going to let them do their second rise for about an hour. So as I've said in my last couple of videos regarding the donuts, I am using a deep fryer. You do not have to use a deep fryer. Use a pot on the stove, but please, please, please take the time to ensure that your oil is at the proper temperature. Make sure your thermometer is working properly so you don't run the risk of undercooking or overcooking your apple fritters when you've spent the time to get them right. Make sure they're cooked right. Okay, so I'm ready to start frying my apple fritters. So I've got my pan here with the rack and paper towel underneath to catch any of the excess grease. My apple fritters are looking good. They've gotten slightly puffy while sitting on their second rise. The oil has been heated to 370 degrees and I'm ready to go. So you simply pop them into the oil. They will sink to the bottom and rise up, and I'm going to flip them usually around 2 minutes per side. I find it's easiest just to use a set of chopsticks to flip them over. You could use whatever you find is easiest for yourself. And then once they're done, I'm going to let them cool before I glaze them. Now when it's time to make your glaze, all you got to do is mix your powdered sugar, corn syrup, the optional vanilla, and your 1 to 3 tablespoons of hot water all together in a bowl. If you like a thicker icing, then you're going to use less water. If you want it to be thinner and a little bit more translucent, then you just add a little bit more water. So it's totally personal preference, whatever you prefer. Once your glaze is ready, you just simply dip them into the glaze and let them set. So that concludes the 3-part series of donuts. Those ones were my apple fritters. Again, one of my absolute favorites. So let me know what you think. Please, again, like, subscribe, comment, send me any messages, any questions, comments, anything. I love hearing from you guys. And we will see you guys next time when I figure out what I want to do on the next episode. So I'm open to ideas if anyone out there wants to send me some. Have a good day, guys. Bye.